Today we're going to talk about user experience construction and rendering and how it's about to undergo a major shift as we move through the cloud era. Today what we see are decomposition activities underway for large enterprises as they take their enterprise applications and decompose them into cloud services. Same time, mobile is hacking off pieces of applications for uses appropriate for certain mobile contexts, smaller, more manageable bits of experience. And then we have smaller apps in app stores, single-purpose apps, very easy to do particular things. You're in, you're out. Turn the app off, and functionality has been parted out in some ways to smaller single-purpose applications. So all these trends are underway. No one's surprised by these, but really it's sort of a creep up to a larger seismic shift that's going on in the world of user experience. So traditional applications have a large set of capabilities and a diverse collection of user experiences. Some where machines exhibit capabilities that all users are expected to use in the same way. The same application could have different capabilities for different users. But because the computing formats are now smaller and more powerful, we're able to see that these applications can be parted out because the application platforms are easier to develop for. Mobile applications and situational applications are easier to do and significantly simplify the user's task versus dealing with a large integrated application, having to troll through lots of different menus in order to find the capability of interest. In this case, users simply, it's more of a search for the app task, which is much easier than searching through a menu hierarchy to find application functionality. What it means is that there's a proliferation of these smaller experiences. Teenagers today, this is what they've known. I was talking recently to my son and I said, do you think a time will come where they start to sweep up these apps into collections and you start to get a different class of applications? Right now they say there's an app for that, right? It might be like, there's a collection for that general class of problem, not the specific thing that you want to do this one time, but I want to do something with my garden. So is it the case that these apps will re-aggregate? Once we've got thousands and thousands of apps, we're going to have some way to manage that complexity. Certainly the way we managed it in the past is not something we want to repeat. Did it because we had to. But right now, what we have is a Humpty Dumpty, but the pieces are they're not put back together. Okay, it's like his ears up here, his foot's over there, and so on. So how do we reassemble this? What are the rules to recombine experiences? Not going to be the same as how we combined experiences to begin with, because oftentimes there were technical, logistical, or other reasons not pertaining to the user's interests that caused apps to be drawing lines around certain sets of user experiences. Release schedules, competitive things, all kinds of technical considerations caused us to aggregate sets of user experiences into applications in a way that we wouldn't do if we had to choose which ones to recombine today and have the flexibility to recombine at will. Other things are changing as well. If you think about how human preferences evolve, in the early days, before there were a lot of gourmet chefs around, maybe you tracked down a saber-toothed tiger with a few of your buddies, you killed it, you brought it back, maybe you cooked it right away. Certainly, if it was there a day or two, you'd want to cook it. Maybe you run across a spice or something like that out in the wild. And that's about it. As time rolls on, user preferences become more refined. And so we have gourmet foods, and these are frequently targeted for specific user groups who have a very precise preferences, or a lot of them. It becomes more of a niche market, lots of products for very specific things. So this is kind of what you see. An enterprise app has this ability to service, say, hundreds of different kinds of users or user experiences. Now, when we take a look at assembling micro experiences into sets, typically, and when we do user research now, we even find this, even though these kinds of capabilities don't exist yet, sweeping up a bunch of micro experiences and stapling them together for a targeted niche experience, we do find users saying that they want to do very particular things. Okay. Something else that's changing is that these niche experiences, which are developing out of more coarse-grained experiences, they're more refined, may be combinable into an aggregate experience, but the way that we combine the aggregate experience probably isn't much like the glue that held together an enterprise app, so that's going to be a little different. As the back-end services become more granular and repurposable, the flexibility of our user design activity is vastly expanded. But these experiences are going to want to come together in a very different way than they were sort of opportunistically co-located in an enterprise app. Lots of reasons why they found themselves next to each other in an enterprise app, and as I said earlier, not all of them related to user preferences. So what we know is that the UX is kind of falling apart, okay? But how far does this trend go before it changes? This is where we get to see the future. We get the future seeing goggles. So how do we put them on? How do we see through this time of great change to a period where we glimpse the different way? Other paradigm shifts have presaged the future state as well. But often what we found is our current vision, or our degree of familiarity or expertise with the current paradigm, was what prohibited us from seeing the changes. So there would start to be anomalies, there would start to be different things, and people would discount them, or they would say, don't bring that in here. That's not what we want to be doing. That's, that's the interest of a small niche group of people, never be popular, and they're discounted, They're discounted until too many of them pile up, and whoosh, the paradigm flips, okay? So the idea is that if you are able to free yourself from a strong affinity to the current way of designing user experiences, you may be able to kind of shake off that paradigm, look through the transitional period, see the next one, okay? And those who, of course, can prepare for it can get to the future first. So what I said to my team is, well, okay, we're decomposing all these cloud services. A lot of it is back-end oriented stuff. Certainly, they'll be recombinable for very novel front-end experiences. So why don't we think about that kind of design, start doing that kind of design now, even though we don't have an inventory of a great number of back-end services that are written in such a way that they can be opportunistically recombined. But if we planned on that, we started designing for that now, then we'd have this latent design that would sort of flip once we got to a critical mass of back-end services to light up those collections of front-end services. So that's that's what we have to look forward to. What would those front-end experiences look like once we move through this transitional phase? Well, we already know from apps and things of that nature that there's an atomic experience. There's a small experience that people need. Large enough to be useful, small enough to be quick, right? We also know, though, that these experiences do want to live with other similar experiences. It's atomic, so it's not necessary, but it could also interact with other atomic services more in a, think about a peer-to-peer kind of way. So there's no organizing principle here. We've just got these small experiences. My Facebook app, maybe it could send information to my printer app, right, and print out a picture or something like that. So the apps kind of can chatter back and forth to each other. Experiences can talk to each other. Now, once you go beyond that, then you begin to think about a set of experiences that can work together in orchestration. So whether they can operate alone and they evidence different behavior when they're co-located with other similar experiences, exactly how it'll be defined, obviously there's choices to be made there. All right. You can even imagine, and when we go beyond that, an overlay, which provides organizing principles and additional capabilities to its constituent smaller experience sets. So it's like, okay, you've got these smaller experiences. They could be apps, or they could be experiences within apps if combined in certain ways. And it may be that there's an organizing higher order experience that almost envelops these smaller experiences, gives them context, gives them meaning, and they behave differently in the presence of the orchestrator experience. This overlay could provide organizing principles and additional capabilities to its constituent smaller experiences. Experience front ends in the future will be able to interact with multiple back ends, evidencing different character with each combination. So it's as if the front end is choosing what it needs and behaves differently. It's an interaction when it's interacting with a certain back end. If I just make something up on the fly, I think, okay, front end is a filter app, and when it interacts with geospatial back-end services, maybe it's filtering up and down granularity. So you see more precise map or more granular map. When it's interacting with restaurant and food choices, maybe you see at a coarse grain level, you'll see kinds of restaurant districts, and then you zoom down and you see actual restaurants. So a Chinese area and then different Chinese restaurants, and then perhaps within that you'd see within a restaurant different experiences you could have. So where we are is we're in the shearing apart of the enterprise back-end functionality. Sort of people look at it and they go, oh, that's the hard part, right? So we got to how do we get the transactional system and the order fulfillment system separate from the cart, if you want an e-commerce example. But while that's going on, it's pushing and pulling the user experiences almost as an afterthought, right? And so what I'm saying is the whole system will be turned on its head once we get through this decomposition phase, because the phase we're going to go into next won't be anything like the industrial age era, where people thought of collections of software features, evidence a machine. This machine does these kinds of things. Any user can use it. It's very useful. It's very general. That's not the case. Focus is not there. The focus is going to be on the collection of compelling user experiences, and that's going to drive from the front end backwards the kinds of back-end aggregations that we're going to expect to see. So the different world is going to be that there will need to be new rules for the combination of experiences, because once they actually do become atomic and free and able to combine in a peer-to-peer fashion, but also in a more granular to coarse-grained fashion, then what you're going to see is a whole different user experience model and a whole different set of, it's going to be very generative, there's going to be a whole different set of user experiences that can be put out there. So, future looks bright.